Hello, hello. Speaking as a trans person, if there is one thing that trans people love doing, it's taking a character and making them trans. With that, I don't tend to see a lot of overlap in the characters chosen between trans masks and transfems. In my experience, it seems like we're picking different characters. Like, we're not usually picking the same characters. But there are exceptions, of course, on occasion, and Blitz happens to be one of them. I do see transfems. A lot of it is just me, but I've seen other ones do it. But I see a lot of trans masks who also take Blitz. Damn. Trans mask specifically. And it's interesting to me, why, I wonder why there's that overlap, you know? And I don't have much of a grasp on the transmasculine viewpoint, naturally. So, and it's always a good first step in understanding anyone else's viewpoint to understand and be able to explain your own. So, that's what I'm here to do. Try not moving the intro, doing a little intro bit first and then taking my, intro. I don't know, how do you refer to those separately? Whatever. We'll see how I like it after editing this. Different setup, also. I didn't feel like doing... it was actually a lot of effort to get it how I did with the, solid wood panels behind me. It was more than I wanted to get. I'm just on my couch now. I think this is probably a better choice anyway. The background's more interesting. That's always a good idea. It was easier to, I've got, I can set up some stuff here. I'm on theme. I have my Blitz shirt. I got this painting of the trans flag in the back. That's always there. I didn't, put it up just for this. I have a bi flag and a lesbian flag, too, but I'm not moving. Whatever. You can just trust me that I have those. And, of course, I got this Stolitz puzzle that I put together. This was not an easy puzzle to do, let me tell you. This is clearly not an artwork designed to be a puzzle. I enjoyed conquering this beast, but man, was it difficult. That's not what this video is about, so I'm gonna move on. So, anyway, yeah. I want to talk about Blitz. I already did a trans analysis video before on Ash from Fantastic Mr. Fox. That one is a little different because it's about analyzing genuine subtext within the film and how it can be interpreted as being trans subtext when viewed through a trans lens. I think Ash can legitimately be viewed subtextually as a trans character. Blitz, I'm going to be looking at subtextual things. That's how analysis works. But I'm not declaring that subtext is saying, you could take it as Blitz is trans. I don't think that's a way you can read it. But I do think there are ways that you can, look at Blitz's character and map trans feminine experiences onto, all these given events and characterizations that we, look at and see within the show. The usual starting point for me whenever I think in detail about making characters trans is explaining why they haven't realized / aren't out yet. Why in canon are they still a man, because that's usually what I'm going for. This is... cis men are a common target for... characters who are presented as cis men are a common target for I want to make this character trans. Not as often is it cis women, presented as cis women, should say. It still happens. It just doesn't happen to... that would be a whole other discussion about why certain attentions on certain characters, trans people. Anyway, whatever. I'm getting way, way off where I want to be. So, explaining why the character has not figured this out for themselves yet. Usually, with a lot of the characters deal with, I imagine it's a lot of repression of the trans feelings. And I think it's a major case of that with Blitz. So that means it's time to go back to the circus.
You ready, Blitzo? Born ready.
Blitz is not the most successful clown. This is laid out pretty clearly. From expressions during this whole balloon segment, and from this conversation with Stolas later, we do, however, know that at least at this young age, Blitz does want to be successful.
I'm gonna run my own circus, and I'm gonna be the most famous imp ever, and I'll be able to do what I wanna do all day.
Fizzaroli over here, meanwhile, represents that success that Blitz would like to have.
Well, Fizzaroli is a big draw. He has a few more shows to be in today, so it would be pretty expensive.
Down the line, Fizz assumes this leads to resentment and Blitz lashing out purposefully and starting the whole fire, but we know that's not actually what happened. I don't think it's unreasonable, however, to expect that Blitz was jealous of Fizz on some level. And, like, the way that, like, in Lululand, the way Blitz responds to the Fizzbot does, like, it feels like there is a level of jealousy at the success there. That's how I read it, at least.
I make more money killing people than you do being a cheap-ass robo ripoff of an overrated sellout jester!
Part of why I think this also probably has a lot to do with cash. We don't get a ton of cash. But what we do get makes it abundantly clear he is not a good father, and would much rather have Fizz for a kid. Outright gives Fizz a card that says, "I wish you were my son." It is honestly impressive that he somehow is not the worst father in this show. He manages to be better than Crimson. I don't know if you can argue he's better than Paimon. They're kind of on the same level. Anyway, the point here is that Fizz, to Blitz, represents both the ideal performer and also the ideal son. Even if Blitz doesn't necessarily care all that much about Cash's approval, I think these ideas are still kind of interlinked. Being the best performer goes hand in hand with being the best son, the best boy, because that's what Fizz is. And, like, that makes sense, right? Like, gender itself is a performance. Being the best son / best boy is about putting on the best performance, something Blitz already wants to do. Ultimately, these ideas aren't separate. Now, that's Blitz as a child. We don't get much of a sense of the intervening time from childhood to this, like, late teens, early adulthood time. And so we don't really, like, get much of a sense of what ambition Blitz may or may not have in this time. We do know, however, that even after the whole accident, Blitz doesn't give up on being a clown right away. Like, you know, with this whole bit from Lululand in mind, and the fact that it was 5 years after the accident before Fizz first won one of Mammon's clown pageants.
Misunderstanding or no, it's hard to just forgive you. It's been 15 years, and that's so much time.
This is the 10th year in a row you've done this stupid pageant, Froggy.
You would assume Blitz spent a minimum of 5 years still trying to make this whole clown thing happen. Like, maybe he didn't get a job here at Lululand immediately, but he at least had one 5 years on after the accident, like, at minimum. So you can assume he was still trying to make this whole showbiz thing work for him. And it did not happen. Did not. Obviously, the accident itself and the direct consequences of it seem to be, like, a major root for Blitz's self-worth issues, but I bet the further lack of any success in clownery just added to that. Low self-worth is a major aspect of a lot of trans people's lives, pre-transition, and especially pre-realizing they're trans. Not to mention, I spent a good chunk of time there establishing that a lot of Blitz's feelings in general are tied to Fizz, all through the entire first portion of their lives, to the point of Blitz crushing on Fizz. Blitz already seemingly didn't feel good enough for Fizz, couldn't face actually admitting to this crush. Imagine how much more complicated things would be if working through trans feelings had to happen on top of that. Particularly if Fizz is gay. I don't know if we know that for certain, but there's no implication that he likes women. And I can imagine that that would certainly be unhelpful for addressing an internal idea of maybe I'm a woman. You've got the, you're crushing on a gay man. Like, you're not gonna want to consider the idea that you aren't also a man. You know? So, like, it makes sense that the trans feelings are probably pushed down. Then, after this accident, Blitz starts to resent Fizz in turn, which just complicates everything even more. And Blitz is very, very clearly the type to repress instead of think about complicated things. Sings it outright, even.
So complicated. I hate when it's complicated. Why do I always end up in situations that are complicated? Here I go again, getting in my head.
The next big thing to happen in Blitz's life is Veronica. I am recording this before Apology Tour, so the extent of what their relationship was like is still unknown to me at this time, but I don't think it would matter too much in terms of what I want to, discuss here. Because the important things from it are Blitz's continued self-destructive tendencies.
You gonna run off, leaving someone else to pay for the hotel room, steal their car, and run 3 rings to Rap and max my credit cards on shitty horse riding lessons?
God damn it, whore, you will not let that go!
And sense of self-worth being tied to sex instead of, just outright love. It's assumed, at least, that those feelings are, related to the relationship with Veronica. It might not be, we don't know. Apology Tour isn't out yet. But that idea, at least, it exists with Blitz. It now seems like the time to bring it up, basically. Blitz feels unworthy of love, but does seem to find pride in being a sexual being.
Okay, my dick is good. See him? I'm gonna do that thing he likes. Am I not, fucking you good enough? Because I can always do better.
Also, within that, Blitz is the man in these situations. It reads, at least, that that's sort of the idea. When one of the few ways you feel any sense of self-worth comes from this masculine sexual role, you're not exactly primed to start unrepressing trans feelings. And it gets even more complicated when Luna enters the picture. Already went over how Cash was a terrible father, and it's very, very clear that Blitz does not want to continue this cycle of terrible parenting with Luna, to the point of being perhaps too overbearing with love.
Everybody's got issues, especially dads. And sometimes they fuck up. Well, all the time. That doesn't mean they don't care.
Luna has developed a defense mechanism of being rude and detached and quick to aggression, which means she is not quick to affection, and doesn't extend the courtesy of referring to Blitz as Dad too often. This means it's special to Blitz when she does.
Shut up, Dad! Oh, Blitz!
You can see where I'm going with this. When such positive feelings are attached to being called Dad, you're especially not going to think about how deep down you might actually want to be Mom. By the time of getting to the present with Stolas and everything, there's really just reinforcement of all of these things. Blitz doesn't like to think about complicated emotions, and keeps things buried, and has some sense of self-worth from being a sexual being. Y'all, I'm gonna be honest, self-worth is... I don't even have that much of a list, but it's really killing me for some reason. Continuing. This time frame is a time that we know for certain that Blitz does very well with sex. Enjoys it, has a partner who appreciates it, and it's important because sex is essentially another kind of performance. And this time, unlike before, Blitz is succeeding. I maybe could have made this point in the other section, thinking about it, but I'm making it now, okay? Blitz is succeeding in this performance that is sex, and it's a performance that is very much tied to gender. It's also a performance of gender. And Blitz is finally succeeding at performing in the way previously desired, kind of. You get what I'm at. I wouldn't know this from personal experience. Definitely wouldn't. But it's not uncommon for trans people to do this, to continue trying to do their birth gender correctly by performing the expected role during sex. Sex is an inherently enjoyable activity. Like, biologically, the idea is that sex feels good. And that can reinforce in your brain that, yes, I'm doing gender right. This is how things are supposed to be. But that's not necessarily true, which trans people tend to figure out. Basically, it all comes down to this. I want Blitz to be happy. There is so much to heal from, and progress has been made, but there is still so much Blitz has to work through. And when a lot of it is this lack of self-worth and feeling unworthy of love, I can see a lot of pre-transition trans experience in Blitz. So I really like the idea of part of Blitz's healing journey being coming out and accepting herself as a trans woman. I did not personally have the hardest trans journey, but so much of Blitz's character feels so reminiscent of what I know many of my fellow trans sisters have gone through and are going through in their lives. Another, just couple things, not like strong evidence or anything, but we know Blitz is perfectly comfortable in feminine clothing and is also trans-affirming. Has a friend who is a trans sister, apparently knows this guy who's trans, and literally has a big disclaimer on this whiteboard of horse OCs that all of them are trans. Cis people do make their OCs trans sometimes. Like, certainly. But it's far more common for trans people to do so. So, case closed is what I'm saying. Further proof, I got this lovely commission of my Impsona helping paint Blitz's horns, and Blitz has a very soft and happy expression. What more could you want? For real though, I'm very, very happy with this art. Huge, huge shout out to @MiniManuke on Twitter. Their art is wonderful. Link to them in the description. But yeah, I hope this was interesting. Like I said, Blitz obviously isn't and won't actually be trans in the show, but between the enduring lack of self-esteem and how important Fizz is when Fizz represents things unattainable for Blitz, and one of those things is being loved as a son, I feel rather compelled to have this headcanon of a trans feminine Blitz. And also, like I said, I'd be interested in learning the trans masculine view in more detail, so I hope this acts well in the opposite way for demonstrating the trans feminine view. Or at least my personal one, naturally. And, with that, I think I'm done here. This would be the sort of thing that would probably be pretty interesting to revisit once we're deeper in the show. Once we get, I'm curious, will the apology tour and learning more about Verosika change things? It probably wouldn't change much, but would it add things? That tends to be how things go. Ideas like this get added to rather than taken away from. So that might be the case. Maybe as the relationship with Stolas develops, we might get more interesting things I could point to as being trans. Maybe it'll make interesting things for the trans masculine view. I don't know. I'm curious. I'm excited for more of the show in general through the next probably years that we're getting it. But yeah. Thank you again for watching. Toodles!